After being reborn, I deliberately missed every chance to meet the woman who had been my CEO wife. When she came to my office to wait for me after work, I'd slip out the back door to avoid her. When she transferred to my city for a job, I applied for a top-secret project at an aerospace facility in the middle of nowhere. It was all because in my previous life, despite an engagement arranged by our parents since childhood, she postponed our wedding again and again. It wasn't until a drunken, hazy night that we ended up sleeping together, an incident Chloe was convinced I had orchestrated. To avoid a scandal for both our families, she had no choice but to marry me. Yet, after we were married, whenever I brought up the subject of intimacy, she avoided it like the plague. When I finally had to force the issue, demanding she fulfill her marital duties, she would just reply with a cold, respectful, "I will comply." It led to me trying to tragically pleasure myself to sleep, only to die from the sheer stress of it right then and there. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was a tangle of messy sheets. Before I could even process it, a woman's icy voice cut through the air. "I've already called our parents. The wedding will be in 5 days. Ethan, I hope you're satisfied now." I looked up and saw Chloe. She wasn't the woman in her 50s I remembered from my deathbed, but a vibrant, beautiful woman in her early 20s. It hit me then, I had been reborn. Reborn to the days just before Chloe and I were forced to marry. The Hayes and the Davenport families had arranged our engagement when we were children, but Chloe never liked me. She delayed the wedding for years, making me the laughingstock of all of Seacrest City. That is, until one night when Chloe was drunk, I happened to run into her, and through a bizarre twist of fate, we slept together. Chloe was always convinced that I had planned that night, which only made her despise me more. But what was done, and everyone knew about it, so she had no choice but to go through with the wedding. After we were married, Chloe treated me with absolute indifference, while I, on the other hand, loved her with everything I had. When Chloe's company was in financial trouble, I handed over the entire Hayes family fortune to her. Chloe preferred quiet, so I learned to walk through our house without making a sound. She mentioned she liked flowers, so I had our entire estate turned into a botanical garden. I spent more than a decade walking on eggshells like that, just to earn a rare, occasional smile from her. I used to think she was just a naturally reserved person, but now I know the truth. She had saved all her love for someone else. The memories stung like 1,000 tiny bites, making my heart ache. I forced myself back to the present and looked at the woman before me. "You don't have to marry me," I said calmly. "We can call off the engagement." Given a second chance at life, I refused to waste my precious time on a woman who didn't love me. Chloe just sneered at my words. "Ethan, are you trying to play hard to get again?" I froze. I remembered how madly in love with her I was when I was younger. I'd thrown tantrums and threatened to call it all off several times, only to be talked down by her parents. Of course, Chloe didn't believe I would ever actually go through with it. "This time, I'm serious," I started to explain, but she was already walking away without a backward glance. Just like in my past life, Chloe never listened to a word I said. It was useless. Fine. If I wanted to end the engagement, I could just talk to her parents directly. Besides, I had more important things to worry about. I picked up my phone and made a call. "Professor, is it too late for me to apply for the Stardust project at the Aerospace Research Center?" My professor's voice on the other end was filled with pleasant surprise. "Of course, they specifically requested you. But as I told you before, this is a top-level classified project. Once you go to the Nevada facility, you can't come back for at least 10 years. You can't even contact anyone. Are you sure about this?" I'd majored in aerospace engineering, graduated at the top of my class, and my graduate thesis was on a technology critical to national interests. The ARC had offered me a position right out of school. It was my dream job. But in my last life, because Chloe had insisted we get married, I gave up that dream to stay by her side. This time, I was going to live for myself. "I've made up my mind," I said. "I'm going." The professor was thrilled. "Excellent. The project is starting soon. You'll have to leave in 5 days. Make sure you say your goodbyes." But I had no family to say goodbye to. My parents died when I was 15, leaving me as the last of the Hayes family. I called Chloe's parents and told them I was calling off the engagement. After hanging up, I headed to an auction house. My late mother was a renowned ceramic artist, and ever since she passed, I've made it my mission to collect her works in her memory. One piece in particular, titled Love, which she created while she was pregnant with me, had eluded me for years. As luck would have it, it was coming up for auction just before I was due to leave for Nevada. When I arrived at the auction, I was surprised to see Chloe there with Julian Vance. The moment she saw me, she spoke coldly. "Ethan, what kind of game are you playing now?" I was confused. "What are you talking about?" Her beautiful features hardened with impatience. You called my parents to call off the wedding. Was that just because you were afraid I'd back out? Don't worry. The invitations are already sent. I'm not backing out. I realized then that she still didn't believe I was serious about ending things. You've misunderstood. I really am, I started, but she cut me off again. Ethan, that's enough. Looking into her cold, emotionless eyes, I suddenly lost the will to argue. Fine. In 4 days, when the groom doesn't show up for the wedding, they'll finally understand I'm serious. The auction began shortly after. Chloe turned to Julian, her voice soft. Julian, your birthday is in a few days. Tell me what you'd like, and I'll buy it for you. Julian, however, just nervously fidgeted with his sleeve and shook his head. Aunt Chloe, you've already done so much by raising me. Everything here is too expensive. I'm not worthy of it. Nonsense, Chloe frowned. My Julian deserves the best in the world. Julian's mother, who had worked for Chloe, died 12 years ago while saving Chloe's life. Out of gratitude and guilt, Chloe had taken him in, telling him to call her Aunt Chloe. He was only 10 at the time. She was nearly 20. Now, years later, that little boy had grown into a tall, handsome young man. Watching Chloe look at him now, a faint blush on her cheeks, I realized just how oblivious I'd been in my past life to not see her feelings for him. Just then, the auctioneer's voice rang out. And next, we have the renowned ceramic sculpture, Love. A pristine white sculpture was brought to the stage, depicting a mother elephant embracing her calf. Julian's head shot up, and Chloe immediately noticed. You like this one? He blushed. It reminds me of my mother. At that exact moment, I raised my paddle. 10 million. I had opened with a bid twice its market value. I was determined to get my mother's work back. But to my shock, Chloe raised her own paddle. 15 million. I whipped my head around to stare at her. Her expression was completely matter-of-fact. Julian likes it, she said. A flicker of rage ignited within me. It was made by my mother. Chloe froze, her eyes darting to the artist's name in the catalog. Her hand holding the paddle slowly lowered. But then, Julian spoke, his voice thick with emotion. It's okay, Aunt Chloe. I'm not worthy of something so beautiful anyway. Seeing the boy's reddened eyes, Chloe's heart seemed to ache. Without a moment's hesitation, she turned to an auction official. Place an unconditional bid. I don't care what it costs. I'm winning that sculpture. An unconditional bid meant she would automatically top any other offer by $1 million. She was going to get love, no matter the price. The color drained from my face. Chloe, I began, my voice trembling, do you really have to do this? In all the years we've known each other, I have never asked you for a single thing, but this time I'm begging you. Please let me have my mother's work. She told me stories about this specific piece. It's the one I've always wanted back the most. But Chloe was unmoved. I'm sorry. It's rare for Julian to want something. My hand, holding the paddle, dropped to my side. Though my parents had left me a substantial inheritance, my liquid assets were no match for the Davenport fortune. In the end, my mother's love was presented to Julian. Thank you, Aunt Chloe. I love it, he said, taking it with a joyful expression. But then, his grip suddenly loosened. The sculpture crashed to the floor, shattering into 100 pieces. My mother's favorite work was destroyed. I gathered the shards and took them home, carefully trying to piece them back together. I had just managed to assemble a rough outline of the shape when our housekeeper approached. Sir, Mr. Vance is here. He's kneeling at the front gate, saying he's here to apologize. He says he won't get up until you come out and personally tell him he's forgiven. I didn't even look up from my work. I'm not seeing him. A little while later, the sky opened up and a torrential downpour began. Chloe stormed into the Hayes mansion, her face a mask of fury. Ethan, haven't you taken this far enough? The usually composed woman's eyes were blazing. Julian has been kneeling out there in the rain for an hour. All you have to do is walk outside and say you forgive him. Is that so difficult? My hands, busy with the ceramic fragments, finally stilled. He's the one who decided to kneel, I said coldly. He destroyed something of my mother's. Why on earth should I be the one to go out and console him? You! Chloe was seething. Just then, her assistant rushed in, panicked. Ms. Davenport, it's terrible. Mr. Vance has fainted. What? The color drained from Chloe's face. She looked over and saw me, still calmly working on the sculpture. In a fit of rage, she swept her arm across the table, sending the pieces I had painstakingly assembled crashing to the floor again. Ethan, you're heartless. With that, she turned and ran out the door to help Julian up from the rain-soaked ground. I stared at the shattered pieces on the floor, now broken beyond any hope of repair, and my eyes burned. Me, heartless? For all those years, I chased after her, begging for just a single glance, And what did it get me? A miserable death in my last life, and her cruel indifference in this one. Who was the truly heartless one here? I knelt on the floor, picking up the hopelessly shattered fragments, piece by piece. Chloe, I'm done loving you. Every last bit of it is gone. Since I was determined to cut all ties, I packed up everything Chloe had ever given me over the years and had it all sent back to the Davenport estate. They were supposedly gifts from her, but I knew her parents had forced her every time. She'd just have an assistant pick something out randomly. The only exception was the Davenport family heirloom, a jade pendant. It was too valuable to mail, so I decided to return it to her in person. But when I got to the hospital and stood outside Julian's room, I heard his voice from within. "Aunt Chloe, you shouldn't be so good to me. I'm afraid I'll get used to it, and then I won't know what to do when you get married." Through the small glass window in the door, I saw the look of pure adoration on Chloe's face. She raised a hand, as if instinctively wanting to pull him into a hug, but she stopped herself. Instead, her hand came to rest on his head, her gaze full of a quiet, restrained affection. "Don't be silly. Even after I'm married, I'll always take care of you." Julian's eyes lit up, but then Chloe continued, "I've told you, you can think of me as your real aunt. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life." The light in his eyes dimmed, and he looked down. "Just an aunt," he murmured. "But after you're married, you'll have your own children," he mumbled. "When you have a child of your own, what will I be to you?" "We won't," Chloe said instantly, without a hint of hesitation. "Ethan and I will not be having children." Julian looked stunned. "Why not?" Chloe looked down at him, her expression a complex mix of emotions I couldn't decipher. "I've already lied to Ethan. I told him I have a uterine condition, that giving birth would put me at risk of hemorrhaging. He promised he wouldn't force me, and that he'd get a vasectomy after we're married. Julian, I will always be your Aunt Chloe, and everything I have will go to you someday. So please, don't worry, okay? Aunt Chloe." Julian's eyes welled up with tears as he threw himself into her arms. Standing there at the door, I felt the blood drain from my face. Chloe had, in fact, told me about her supposed uterine condition and the risk of hemorrhaging. I never once doubted her. In my past life, I got a vasectomy right after we were married, terrified that she might have an accidental pregnancy that could kill her. I had been so careful, so dedicated to protecting her, and I never in my wildest dreams imagined it was all a lie. The realization was too much. I stumbled backward. Just then, one of Chloe's bodyguards came around the corner and saw me standing there. "Mr. Hayes?" he asked, surprised. I shoved the jade pendant into his hand. "Give this to Chloe," I said, then turned and walked away without another word. Today was my birthday. Since I was leaving soon, I decided to throw a large party for my friends, something I rarely do. I never expected Chloe to show up with Julian in tow. "A gift," she said coolly, tossing a box at me. I immediately handed it back. "Didn't you get the package I left with your bodyguard?" If she'd seen that I'd returned the family heirloom, she would have understood that the wedding was off, but she just frowned. "I didn't look at it. I've told you before, I don't need anything. You don't have to give me gifts." Took me a second to realize what she meant. She must have seen the gift bag and just assumed it was from me, so she hadn't even bothered to open it. I was suddenly reminded of my past life, when I was sorting through her things after she died. I found a storage room in the basement filled with dusty, unopened boxes, all the gifts I had ever given her. The necklace I spent a week carving for her 25th birthday. The good luck charm I'd spent 3 days and nights praying for at a remote temple when she was sick at 33. The custom-blended calming incense I'd studied for a year to create when she started getting headaches at 40. All those gifts, filled with so much of my time and effort, were tossed into a storage room without a second glance. Meanwhile, the paper stars, cheap bracelets, and even simple notes from Julian were all kept carefully in her safe. A bitter smile touched my lips. I didn't bother explaining further and went to mingle with my other guests. About halfway through the party, Julian suddenly collapsed against Chloe. "Aunt Chloe," he groaned, "I feel so dizzy." Chloe's expression changed instantly. "Are you sick? Did you eat something that disagreed with you? I'm taking you to the hospital." She helped him to his feet and started leading him out of the party without another word. I frowned. As the host, I was responsible for whatever happened to him here. Not wanting any trouble on the day I was supposed to leave, I decided to follow them. But as I approached Chloe's black Bentley, I heard Julian's ragged breathing from inside. "Aunt Chloe, I'm so hot, and I feel so full down there." My hand, raised to knock on the window, froze in midair. Even I could tell what was wrong, let alone Chloe inside the car with him. I heard her anxious voice. "Julian, were you drugged? I'm taking you to the hospital right now." But Julian grabbed her. "There's no time. Aunt Chloe, I feel awful. Please just give yourself to me. You're the only one I want." His deep, alluring voice seemed to strike at her most vulnerable point. Chloe had been holding back with every ounce of her willpower, but hearing his confession, all her repressed feelings finally burst forth. "All right," she whispered. The boy instantly became like an animal, pouncing on her. I stood there, watching the car rock violently, listening to sounds coming from Chloe that I had never heard in my life, so wanton, so alluring. A weak, bitter smile formed on my lips. In our past life, we were married for 20 years, and I could count the number of times we'd been intimate on one hand. The once-a-month schedule we eventually settled on was a birthday present I had to beg for when I turned 35. I had always thought she just wasn't interested in sex. But listening to the passion in that car, I finally understood. It wasn't that she wasn't interested in sex. She just wasn't interested in me. I turned away. Maybe it was for the best. In this life, everyone was getting what they truly wanted. I went back to the party, and 2 hours later, it was winding down. I went upstairs to the lounge for a glass of juice, and as I was about to sit down, a sudden, intense heat flooded my body. I knew something was wrong and was about to call for help when a cold voice came from the doorway. "How does it feel, Ethan? Being drugged isn't very pleasant, is it?" I snapped my head up and saw Chloe standing in the doorway. Clicked instantly. "You drugged my juice? Chloe, what the hell are you doing?" She sneered and stepped forward. "I should be asking you that. Why did you drug Julian? Just because he accidentally broke your mother's sculpture, you decided to drug him, to humiliate him in public and ruin his reputation. He's just a kid, Ethan. How could you be so cruel?" I was completely floored. "When did I ever drug Julian?" Chloe scoffed. "Don't deny it. I already asked Julian. The only thing he had to drink today was a glass of water you gave him. If it wasn't you, who was it?" In that moment, I truly understood the meaning of blind favoritism. All it took was one sentence from Julian, and Chloe had already condemned me without a second thought. "You're insane," I sneered, struggling to grab my phone to call for an ambulance. But she snatched the phone from my hand. "Chloe, what are you doing?" She looked down at me, her expression imperious. "This drug is potent. An ambulance won't help you. Your only option is to beg me." I didn't understand. "Beg you for what?" "To help you, of course," she said with a cold smile. "But I have a condition. You have to get on your knees and apologize to Julian. Only then will I help you." I stared at her in disbelief. She had just finished having sex with Julian in her car, and now she was offering to have sex with me as an antidote, and she wanted me to beg for it on my knees? I had never felt so disgusted in my life, but she moved closer. "Ethan, why are you pretending? Isn't this what you've always wanted?" she said coldly. "You used the same trick to force me into this marriage. Now I'm just making you apologize for what you did. What's the problem?" I finally snapped. I shoved her away, grabbed a pair of scissors from the desk, and said in a low, dangerous voice, "Me kneel and apologize to Julian? In your dreams." And with that, I plunged the scissors deep into my own thigh. Only then did her expression change. "Ethan, what are you doing?" But I ignored her, pulling the scissors out and stabbing my leg again. The blood wasn't visible on my dark trousers, but it quickly soaked through my white shirt, staining it crimson. Chloe stood frozen, staring. Was I really so unwilling to touch her that I would rather do this to myself? The thought seemed to agitate her more than anything else had. "Ethan!" she shrieked, grabbing my hand. The scissors clattered to the floor. The sharp, searing pain seemed to clear my drug-addled mind. At the same time, I could hear applause from downstairs. They were waiting for the guest of honor to make a speech. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I pushed Chloe away and walked out of the room and down the stairs. The entire party gasped when they saw me covered in blood, but my expression remained calm. I raised my glass and smiled at the crowd. "Happy birthday to me," I said. "May the future be bright." And with that, I finally collapsed. Through the shouts of alarm, I saw Chloe rushing forward to catch me. I was unconscious for a full day and night. When I was discharged and returned home, I had just finished packing my bags to leave when Chloe arrived with Julian. "I looked into the drugging," Chloe said stiffly. "It was an accident. It had nothing to do with you." I didn't react. Julian, standing beside her, started to cry. "Ethan, it's all my fault. I misspoke and made Aunt Chloe misunderstand. To make it up to you, I personally designed a suit for you to wear at the wedding. Consider it a birthday gift." I finally looked up at the suit he was holding, and a memory from my past life came rushing back. I let out a cold laugh. "Do you even bother with measurements when you design things? There's no way I can fit into that." In my past life, on the eve of our wedding, Julian had presented me with a suit he'd personally designed. Chloe had immediately returned the expensive, custom-tailored suit I had chosen and insisted I wear Julian's creation. The ridiculous part was that his suit was far too small and tight for me to even put on. But in my past life, Chloe had just said coldly, "Then just eat less." So, for the 2 days leading up to the wedding, I didn't eat or drink a thing and ended up fainting during the ceremony. I wasn't about to be that foolish in this life. At my words, the color drained from Julian's face. "I'm so sorry," he said, looking terrified. "It's just, when I was designing it, I kept imagining what it would be like if I were the groom, and I accidentally." Chloe's head snapped up to look at him, her expression unreadable. Julian quickly covered his mouth, as if he'd just realized what he'd said. The silence that followed was thick with awkwardness. I broke the silence with a cold laugh. "Well, in that case, you should wear it." Julian froze, but Chloe's face turned to stone. "What are you talking about? I'm his aunt." A sarcastic smile played on my lips. "See? People with a guilty conscience are always the first to get defensive." "Fine, give it to someone else then," I said, not bothering to press the point. "Either way, I'm not wearing it." Chloe frowned. "What are you trying to say?" "I've been perfectly clear from the beginning," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "I do not want to marry you. I will not be at the wedding tomorrow." "Are you playing hard to get again?" she started to say impatiently, but she stopped when she met my icy gaze. Her eyes fell to my heavily bandaged thigh, and she seemed to remember how I'd rather stab myself than let her touch me. An inexplicable irritation seemed to rise in her. "Ethan, the wedding is tomorrow. Stop throwing a tantrum." That was it, she must have thought. I was just acting out because she'd been ignoring me. Soon enough, I'd get over it and be the same eager puppy, desperate to marry her. Her gaze shifted to the suit Julian was holding. I expected her to demand I starve myself to fit into it, just like last time. But instead, she said, "If you prefer the suit you had tailored, then wear that one." Julian's head shot up. "Aunt Chloe," she just patted his head. "It's all right. You can design something else for him another time." Julian's face paled slightly, but he nodded obediently. Chloe left with Julian, but it wasn't long before Julian returned alone. He stood before me and got straight to the point. "Ethan," he said coldly, "you saw what happened in the car yesterday, didn't you?" The timid boy was gone, replaced by someone whose eyes were filled with open hostility. I didn't answer his question directly. Instead, I asked one of my own. "You drugged yourself, didn't you?" He didn't deny it. "That's right. Aunt Chloe has always loved me. I was just giving her an excuse to act on it." "I see. In my past life, I was never sure if her feelings for him were one-sided. Now I knew they were mutual." "Well then," I said, "I wish you both happiness." I meant it sincerely, but my words seemed to set him off. "Cut the crap, Ethan. I have to admit, though, you've gotten a lot smarter than you used to be." He sneered. "You used to just follow her around like a pathetic dog. Now you've learned how to play games. You think refusing to sleep with her yesterday is going to make her see you in a new light? Dream on. Today, I'm going to show you who she really cares about." With that, he lunged at me, pressing a cloth over my nose and mouth. A sharp, chemical smell filled my lungs. I tried to fight back, but with my injured leg, I was too weak. The household staff had already made themselves scarce, sensing the private nature of our conversation. I struggled for a moment, then everything went black. I woke up to intense heat. I opened my eyes and saw fire everywhere. Julian was lying on the floor next to me. It hit me all at once. "You set my house on fire?" I yelled at him. "Are you insane?" He just smirked. "You still think she cares about you, don't you? Today, you're going to see just how much she really loves me." As if on cue, I heard Chloe's frantic voice from downstairs. "Julian, Julian, where are you?" All traces of malice vanished from his face, replaced by pure panic. "Aunt Chloe, I'm in here. Help me." A moment later, Chloe burst into the room. She froze when she saw me, but then a falling ember singed Julian, and he let out a yelp of pain, immediately recapturing her attention. "Julian!" she cried, rushing to his side and helping him up. As she passed me, she said quickly, "Ethan, I'll get Julian to safety, and then I'll come back for you." Then she hurried out of the room. A sarcastic smile touched my lips. Ignoring the searing pain in my leg, I started crawling toward the door with all my strength. I didn't believe for a second that she was coming back for me. I had to save myself. By the time I made it downstairs, the first floor was almost completely consumed by the fire. I saw Chloe frantically clearing a path to the door, while Julian just stood there watching her. Her expression soured when she saw me. "I told you to wait for me," but this wasn't the time to argue. She was about to lead Julian out when he suddenly shouted, "Look out!" A heavy support beam from the ceiling, eaten through by the flames, was falling. The The first section was heading right for me. "Ethan," Chloe cried out, her face paling as she started to move toward me. But a second later, with a loud crack, another section of the beam broke free and plummeted toward Julian. In that split second, Chloe made her choice. She spun around and threw herself in front of Julian, shielding him with her body. The flaming timber slammed into her back. She cried out in pain, her face turning ashen. At the same moment, the other piece of the beam crashed down on me. As the pain exploded through my body, I dazedly looked up to see firefighters rushing in. Chloe was still clutching Julian, holding him in a fiercely protective embrace. I smiled. "So, Chloe, you made the same choice this time, too." When I woke up, I was in a hospital. Chloe, already bandaged and treated, was sitting by my bed. When she saw I was awake, she spoke, her voice stiff. "I've already spoken with the doctor. Our injuries aren't serious. They've been treated. It won't affect the wedding today." I couldn't believe that even now, after everything, she still thought I wanted to marry her. I was too tired to argue. I just got out of bed. "I'm checking out." Today was the day I was supposed to leave for the Stardust project. Couldn't be late, but Chloe, assuming I was just eager to get to the wedding, seemed to let out a small, private sigh of relief. So, I was still desperate to marry her after all. She felt an odd sense of relief, perhaps even a little flicker of happiness. Chloe didn't understand her own feelings, and the confusion made her irritable. Her cold mask snapped back into place. "I'm going to the venue. Meet me there when you're ready." The moment she was gone, I called for my driver. "To the wedding venue, sir?" he asked. "No," I said without a moment's hesitation. "The airport." After grabbing my bags and meeting my professor, I saw that my phone was flooded with iMessages from Chloe. "Ethan, where are you? Why aren't you at the venue? It's almost time. Do you even want to get married or not? Ethan, I'm giving you 10 more minutes. Get here. Now." Her patience apparently gone, she started calling me directly. I didn't even glance at the screen. I just turned off my phone, popped out the SIM card, tossed it in a trash can, and boarded the plane. "Goodbye, Chloe. This life is for me." Meanwhile, at the wedding venue, the guests were all seated. The union of the two most powerful families in Seacrest City was the event of the season, and the hall was buzzing with excitement. Backstage, however, it was chaos. Mr. Davenport's face was grim. "Chloe, have you been able to reach Ethan? The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. If there's no groom, we'll be the laughingstock of the entire city." Chloe's own expression was grim as she tried my number one more time. This time, she was met with the cold, automated voice. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected." With a cry of frustration, she slammed her phone down on the table. What on earth was Ethan doing? Wasn't he the one who was so desperate for this wedding? The one who had supposedly tricked her into it just so he could marry her? Wasn't being her husband his lifelong dream? Now that the day was finally here, where had he gone? Mrs. Davenport hung up her own phone. "I just confirmed with the hospital. Ethan was discharged, but he never came here. Could it be that he really doesn't want to get married?" The more she thought about it, the more plausible it seemed, and she looked ready to burst into tears. "He did say he wanted to call it off. I just thought he was angry. It must be because you've been so cold to him, Chloe. You've finally broken his heart. How am I ever going to face his mother in the afterlife?" Mrs. Davenport and my mother had been best friends since they were girls. After my mother's early death, Mrs. Davenport had always treated me like her own son, eagerly awaiting the day I would officially join their family. "Impossible," Chloe blurted out. "How could he possibly not want to marry me?" But then she remembered the night before. She knew how potent that drug was. Anyone else would have lost all control, would have taken the first available person to relieve the effects. And yet, I had resisted. I had chosen to grievously injure myself rather than touch her. It seemed I really was determined to cut ties with her completely. At that thought, Chloe felt a strange pang in her chest, as if a piece of her heart were missing, and a wave of anxiety washed over her. "I'll go to his house and find him," she said, turning to leave. But her father's voice stopped her. "The Hayes mansion burned to the ground last night. Where are you going to look for him?" Chloe froze. She'd almost forgotten. The fire. The house was nothing but a pile of ashes. Was it because she had saved Julian first during the fire? Was he angry about that? The thought only made her more agitated. She was about to try and think of somewhere else to look for me when one of the wedding planners rushed in. "The groom has arrived." Chloe blinked, then let out a sigh of relief. Of course, she knew it. I loved her too much to actually miss the wedding. I was just playing hard to get. A flash of annoyance went through her. She was just about to give me a piece of her mind for being so childish when she looked up and saw who had entered. She froze. "Julian, what are you doing here?" Then she saw what he was wearing and her shock deepened. "Why are you dressed like that?" The groom who had just arrived wasn't me at all. It was Julian, wearing the very suit he had designed. He blushed at her question and looked down at the floor. "Aunt Chloe, I heard that Ethan never showed up. With all these guests here, if there's no groom, the entire city will be laughing at the Davenport family. So I put on the suit and came. I thought, if Ethan isn't coming, then let me be the groom. Let me marry you, Aunt Chloe." He looked up at her then, his eyes shining, as if he had just used up every last bit of his courage. Chloe was speechless, but Mrs. Davenport, without a word, stepped forward and slapped Julian hard across the face. "You worthless stray. You think you're worthy of marrying our Chloe? In your dreams." The slap seemed to snap Chloe out of her stupor. She pulled Julian behind her, shielding him. "Mother, what are you doing?" she demanded. Her mother just sneered. "Don't play innocent with me, Chloe. You claim he's just a boy you took in, but anyone can see there's something going on between you two. Tell me the truth. Is this little parasite the reason Ethan called off the wedding?" Chloe's eyes widened, but before she could speak, Julian burst into tears. "Mrs. Davenport, if you must blame someone, blame me. I'm the one who fell in love with her. I couldn't control myself. I begged her to be with me. It's all my fault. It has nothing to do with Aunt Chloe." Mrs. Davenport looked like she was about to faint. "You slept together? I'll kill you both, you shameless." She lunged at them, but Mr. Davenport's sharp voice cut through the room. "That's enough." His wife froze. Mr. Davenport looked at Julian, considering him for a long moment before he finally spoke. "As things stand, our only option is to have Julian be the groom." A bright light ignited in Julian's eyes, but his wife shrieked, "Darling, what are you talking about? Do you have a better solution?" Her husband retorted angrily. "Every important person in Seacrest City is sitting out there right now. If there's no groom, the Davenport family becomes a laughingstock. If we swap the groom, there will be gossip, but at least there will be a wedding. Without a groom, we lose all face, and everyone will think Chloe was jilted at the altar. At this late hour, if you don't let Julian do it, where else are you going to find a groom?" He then turned to his daughter. "Chloe, what do you say?" Julian looked at Chloe, his face full of hope, but Chloe hesitated. "But Julian is my ward, legally." "That doesn't matter," her father said impatiently. "You're not blood relatives, and it was never a formal adoption. You've just been his guardian for a few years. There will be talk, but that's better than becoming a city-wide joke." Chloe stood frozen. Just then, they heard the officiant's voice from the main hall, followed by the applause of the guests. The ceremony was starting. Julian grabbed her arm anxiously. "Aunt Chloe, what are you waiting for? Say yes." He could barely contain his excitement. He had been taken in by Chloe when he was 10, and at first, he had truly seen her as a respected elder. But as he grew into a teenager, he found himself falling in love with her beauty, yes, but even more so with the Davenport family's immense wealth. He could sense she had feelings for him too, but that she suppressed them because of their guardian-ward relationship and, of course, her engagement to me. Today, all those barriers could finally be broken. This was his chance to marry her, and he wasn't going to let it slip away. He looked at her, his eyes shining with anticipation, waiting for her to say yes. But instead, she looked up at her father. "Dad, I can't marry Julian." The color drained from Julian's face. Even Mr. Davenport was taken aback. "Why not? I thought you were fond of the boy." Chloe didn't look at Julian. She just spoke to her father in a calm, measured tone. "Dad, making Julian the groom might solve today's problem, but what about tomorrow? The Davenports and the Hayes have numerous joint ventures. And while our companies have professional managers, Ethan holds the ultimate decision-making power. He may not be here today, but do you really think he'll be pleased to hear I married Julian? What if this is just him throwing a tantrum, and he comes back to find I've replaced him? What do you think he'll do then? What if, in his anger, he dissolves all of our business partnerships? Not to mention, a last-minute groom swap will make the Davenports look untrustworthy. It will damage our reputation." Her calm, logical analysis persuaded her father. "You have a point," he conceded. "But what about today's ceremony?" "That's the easy part," Chloe said. "Didn't the Hayes mansion just burn down yesterday? We'll simply announce that the injuries I sustained in the fire have taken a turn for the worse, and we have to postpone the wedding. We can reschedule it for next month." Her mother's eyes lit up. "Yes, darling, that's perfect. Trust me, I've known Ethan his whole life. He would never give up on Chloe." That settled it for Mr. Davenport. "All right, we'll do it your way." Her parents quickly went out to address the guests. Only then did Chloe turn to Julian. Seeing his red, tear-filled eyes, she felt a pang of pity. Julian, she began softly. He looked up at her sharply. Aunt Chloe, is the only reason you're marrying Ethan really because of the business between your families? Her eye twitched. Of course. What other reason could there be? I thought, maybe you'd actually fallen in love with him, he said quietly. How could that be possible? She retorted instantly. Julian forced a weak smile. That's good then. Unconsciously, Chloe's hands clenched into fists, her painted nails digging into her palms. Yes, that was it. She was only marrying me for the sake of her family's business and the promise their parents had made. That was the only reason. After the wedding was officially postponed, Chloe immediately set out to find me. She checked several of the Hayes Corporation offices with no luck, and finally ended up at the university where I did my research. Unlike most heirs, I had no interest in business management, sports cars, or expensive watches. My passion was aerospace research. I'd gone straight from my undergraduate degree to a master's program, leaving the family business in the hands of professional managers so I could stay on at the university as a researcher after graduation. Chloe had always been dismissive of my career. The pay was low, and it did nothing to benefit the family business. She had already decided that once we were married, she would make me quit. When she arrived at the university, she found my professor and asked him point-blank if he had seen me. The professor looked surprised. Ethan has already left. You didn't know? Chloe was taken aback. Left? Where did he go? He's gone to join an aerospace research project. He left this morning. Chloe stood there, stunned. So I'd run off on a business trip just to avoid the wedding? A flicker of annoyance went through her. My temper was certainly getting worse. When is he coming back? She demanded. My professor knew who she was, of course, and that we were engaged. Her question seemed to confuse him. Didn't Ethan tell you? He's joined a top-secret Level 1 classified research project. There's no definite return date. The conservative estimate is at least 10 years. 10 years. The color drained from Chloe's face. Meanwhile, at the Nevada Aerospace Research Center, a private helicopter touched down. As I stepped off, a senior researcher was there to greet me. Hello, she said. I'm Dr. Lena Frost. I'll be your supervisor here. She showed me to my dorm, explained the layout of the facility, and then asked, I've read your file. You're the heir to the Hayes fortune, a true trust fund kid. Life here is pretty Spartan. Are you sure you'll be able to adjust? I smiled. I'll be fine. A simple life is good. We're here to do research, after all. That seemed to please her. She smiled and extended a hand. Welcome to the Stardust Project. I shook it, feeling the dream that had been shattered in my past life finally begin to mend. Back in Seacrest City, Chloe didn't even remember the drive home. She walked through the door in a daze, where her mother immediately rushed to her side. Well, did you find him? Chloe seemed to snap back to reality. He's gone to an aerospace research facility. A research facility? Her mother repeated, confused. Is it a business trip? For how long? Chloe's hands clenched into fists at her sides. A minimum of 10 years, she said, each word seeming to require a monumental effort. Or he might never come back at all. Never coming back? Her mother's face went pale. Then, a thought seemed to strike her. No wonder, she murmured. No wonder what? Chloe asked. I heard a while ago that he was having his corporate managers sign long-term contracts, and that he'd placed a significant portion of his assets into a trust. I assumed it was all in preparation for the marriage. I never imagined it was because he was planning to leave for good. Chloe snapped, her voice sharp with anger. And you didn't think to mention this sooner? Her mother's temper flared in response. I should be asking you the questions. Why would Ethan just up and leave like that? He adored you. For him to suddenly be so determined to call off the wedding, to go so far away. What did you do to him, Chloe? Chloe opened her mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. The events of the past few days came flooding back to her. The way she had humiliated me after agreeing to the marriage. The way she had fought me for my mother's sculpture, only for Julian to break it. The way she had instantly blamed me when Julian was drugged, and had even drugged me in return as some sort of twisted revenge. And the fire where she had chosen him and left me to die. Now, hearing her mother's question, she was forced to confront it all. Forgetting the years of neglect for a moment, just in the last few days alone, she had hurt me so deeply so many times. She spun around and walked out the door. Where are you going? Her mother called after her. Chloe's face was pale, but her voice was determined. I'm going to bring him back. Chloe went straight back to the university and found my professor. Professor, she said without preamble, I need the contact information for the research center where Ethan is working. I'm going to bring him home. The professor stared at her, dumbfounded. Young woman, you must be mistaken. This is a project of national importance. not a summer camp. Every researcher was handpicked. You can't just pull someone out. The usually composed Chloe felt a wave of frustration, and her voice grew sharp. Professor, you don't understand the situation. He doesn't actually want to be there. We had an argument a few days ago, and he only took the job to spite me. It was an impulsive decision. Yes, even now, she was convinced this was all just an impulsive reaction to their recent fights. He'll regret it in a few days, she continued, and that will just disrupt the project. It's better for everyone if I bring him back now. The professor just looked at her, even more confused. No, I think you're the one who's mistaken. Ethan didn't just decide to join this project in the last couple of days. Now it was Chloe's turn to be stunned. Chloe walked out of the university in a daze, the professor's words echoing in her head. Ethan called us last week about this project. He was very insistent. We confirmed with him multiple times. This was definitely not an impulsive decision. Chloe stopped walking. Last week, that was right after she had agreed to the wedding. It was true. I had told her then that I wanted to call it off, but she had assumed it was just another empty threat made in anger. She never imagined I was serious. That while I was ending things with her, I was also making arrangements to leave. But why? That was before the auction, before the drugging, before the fire. Why had I been so determined to leave her then? She couldn't understand it. She arrived home in a fog and was surprised to find her father in the living room, looking pleased. Chloe, you're back. I have some good news. I've sorted out the wedding situation. Chloe's head snapped up, a surge of hope rising in her. You found Ethan? But her father shook his head. Of course not. I've made inquiries. He's on a top-level classified project. No outside contact is permitted. He's completely unreachable. Her shoulders slumped in defeat, but her father continued cheerfully. But it doesn't matter that we can't find Ethan. I've already spoken to his cousin. He's a Hayes after all. He has agreed to take Ethan's place in the wedding. The alliance with the Hayes family will be preserved. I've already spoken to him, and he's agreed. We won't be the laughingstock of Seacrest City after all. No! Chloe's head shot up, her expression horrified. My engagement is with Ethan. How can you just replace him? And aren't you worried he'll be furious when he finds out and cancel all our business deals? What are you talking about? Her father said, frowning. Ethan has left for a long-term project. He has clearly made his intentions to end the engagement known. He has given up on you. Why would he care who you marry? He won't be back for 10 or 20 years, and he's already delegated control of his company. He's not in a position to interfere. In short, all those concerns you raised before the wedding are no longer an issue. Our only remaining problem is to avoid the perception that the Davenports broke the engagement. Marrying another Hayes is the perfect solution. It will show everyone that our family honors its commitments. All our problems are solved. Chloe, what could you possibly still be worried about? Unconsciously, Chloe's hands clenched into tight fists. She stared blankly into space. He was right, she knew. All the practical concerns had been addressed. All she had to do was marry my cousin. She didn't love me, so what difference did it make if she married me or another Hayes? It should have been all the same to her. So why did she feel such a strong sense of resistance? Why did her heart ache as if a piece of it had been carved out? I can't marry Ethan's cousin, she said. She didn't understand why. She just repeated the words mechanically. I just can't. Her father was about to explode, but her mother, who had been silent until now, put a hand on his arm. She looked at her daughter. Chloe, at this point, we don't care who you marry. Ethan's cousin, even Julian, we would accept it. I just want to ask you one thing, she said, looking her daughter straight in the eye. Your insistence on marrying Ethan, is it really just about the promise and the business alliance? Or is it because you love him? Of course it's because, Chloe began, but the words died in her throat. Because if it were only about promises and business, she would have already agreed to her father's plan. Her mother sighed softly, a look of understanding on her face. Chloe, now that he's gone, isn't it time you were honest with yourself? Is it that you truly don't love him, or that you've just been too afraid to admit that you do? Chloe didn't remember leaving the house. Her mother's question echoed in her mind. Her hands clenched into fists. No, how could she possibly love me? The one she loved was Julian. She had to find Julian. All the recent chaos must have confused her. Once she saw him, she would remember who she truly loved. She called her assistant and found out Julian was at a karaoke bar with some friends. She drove there immediately, but as she reached the door of his private room, she heard one of his friends' voices from inside. So, Julian, you were so sure you were going to marry the Davenport heiress. Did you seal the deal or what? Chloe's hand, poised to push the door open, froze. In disbelief, She peered through the small window in the door. Julian was in the center of a group of his friends, the usual pathetic, innocent look on his face replaced by one of pure, arrogant pride. Of course I sealed the deal. Haven't you guys heard? Her old news fiancé, Ethan, has run off to some aerospace lab. He won't be back for 10, maybe 20 years. The other boys cheered. Julian, you're the man. The Hayes and Davenport alliance was ironclad, and you still broke it. You have to tell us. How did you get Ethan to just give up and leave? Julian's smile widened. It took a lot of work. For starters, the only reason she agreed to the wedding in the first place was because I drugged her, which led to her sleeping with Ethan while she was disoriented. Outside the door, Chloe's pupils constricted. The night we'd slept together, I had said we were both just drunk, but she'd always known it was more than that. She had assumed that I had drugged her to force her into the marriage. She had been half right. She had been drugged, but not by me. It had been Julian. But why would he do that? Chloe couldn't understand, and apparently neither could his friends. I don't get it, man. Weren't you just forcing her to marry Ethan? Why would you do that? Julian smiled, a cunning look in his eyes. That's where you're wrong. The Davenport-Hayes alliance is too strong. That marriage was going to happen eventually. Even if she didn't marry him now, she would have had to later. So, I decided to use the opportunity to make her believe Ethan had tricked her, to make her hate him completely. Outside the door, Chloe couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was this conniving, manipulative man really the sweet, innocent Julian she thought she knew? Inside the room, his friends were cheering him on. Julian's grin grew wider, and that was just the beginning. Then, at the auction, I pretended to want his mother's sculpture, made Aunt Chloe pay a fortune for it, and then I accidentally broke it. Then, at his birthday party, I drugged myself to make her sleep with me. I knew that once we crossed that line, she'd never be able to let me go. But that wasn't enough. I had to make her think Ethan was the one who drugged me, to make her hate him even more. I didn't expect him to get smarter, though. Hurting himself like that to prove his innocence was a good move. That frame-up didn't work, but it didn't matter. I just moved on to the next plan. I set fire to the Hayes mansion, and when it came down to it, who did she save? Me. That finally made Ethan give up on her for good. Ha ha ha. Outside the door, the last bit of color had drained from Chloe's face. She couldn't believe that everything that had happened, every single incident, had been orchestrated by Julian. Inside, Julian was still gloating. Ha ha. I did all of that just to make Ethan give up on her, to make him leave on his own. And it actually worked. Ha ha ha. The idiot tucked his tail between his legs and ran. The position of the Davenport son-in-law is mine now. He was practically crowing with triumph when suddenly, bang, the door to the room was thrown open. Seeing the woman standing there, her face a mask of cold fury, Julian's triumphant smile froze on his face. The color drained from his cheeks. Aunt Chloe. He scrambled to put his innocent, pathetic mask back on, but it was too late. Chloe strode across the room and slapped him hard across the face. His friends, terrified, scattered and fled, leaving just the two of them in the room. Julian, Chloe said, her voice a low, dangerous hiss. You have played me for an absolute fool all these years. She remembered the first time she had met him. His mother had just died, and he had looked up at her with his red-rimmed eyes and asked where his mommy was. Guilt and pity had overwhelmed her, and she had vowed to take care of him for the rest of her life. At first, it truly was just a sense of duty and compassion. But as he grew older, he became a young man unlike any she had ever known. The boys in her social circle were all arrogant and entitled, with their fancy cars and expensive watches. But Julian was always so timid, so humble, always acting as if he wasn't worthy of anything good. That vulnerability had made her heart ache for him, and she had mistaken that ache for love. But now, seeing his true face, she felt only the cold, hard anger of betrayal. There was no heartbreak, no disappointment. Why? If she had truly loved him, wouldn't she be heartbroken? Instead, the only time she felt that suffocating, soul-crushing pain was when she thought of me. She thought of my pale, stricken face when he had shattered my mother's sculpture. She thought of me, drugged and desperate, choosing to stab myself rather than touch her. She thought of the look on my face in the fire, a look of calm resignation, as if I had expected nothing less from her. She felt like she couldn't breathe. All her rage, her guilt, her confusion, it all focused on the boy standing in front of her. In that moment, she wanted to kill him. He must have sensed it because for the first time, he looked genuinely terrified. Aunt Chloe, he stammered, please, for my mother's sake. The mention of his mother seemed to break the spell. The murderous rage in her eyes subsided. Julian, she said, her voice as cold and distant as a stranger's. Whatever debt I owed your mother, I have more than repaid it over these past years. From this moment on, you and I are nothing to each other." She turned and walked away, and though he screamed her name behind her, she never looked back. Chloe rushed home to find the living room cluttered with boxes and bags. She frowned. "What is all this?" Her mother's expression was neutral. "Ethan sent some things over a while ago. I'm just getting around to sorting through them. And while I was at it, I found all those things you'd tossed in the basement. I thought you might want to look at them." Chloe stared at the two piles of items on the floor, momentarily stunned. The first pile was the one I had just sent over, all the gifts she had given me over the years. She didn't even recognize most of them, as they were just things she'd had her assistant buy at random. Her expression darkened. Had I really been planning to return everything to her, even before I left? Her gaze then shifted to the second pile. She recognized these. These were the gifts I had given her. She remembered then how I used to love giving her presents. For her birthday, for anniversaries, for every holiday imaginable. It had annoyed her so much that eventually, she'd stopped even opening them, just tossing them into a storage room in the basement. And now, her mother had brought them all out. Numbly, she began to open the dusty boxes, one by one, a good luck charm for her college entrance exams, from a temple she remembered was famously effective, but which required waiting in line overnight for more than 10 hours. The designer handbag she'd wanted for her birthday last year, one that could only be purchased directly from the designer himself. And from just last month, the stock transfer agreement for the media company she'd casually mentioned wanting to acquire. I had apparently gone and negotiated the deal for her. So many gifts, each one filled with so much thought and effort, and she had never even bothered to open them. A pain like a physical tearing spread through her chest. What had she done? She had taken the heart of a man who loved her so deeply and crushed it under her heel, all while treasuring a liar and a manipulator. Trembling, her eyes fell on the last gift bag. Her expression flickered with a sudden hope. She remembered this one. This was the one I had given her just a few days ago. If I had really been planning to leave her all along, why would I have given her a gift? She clung to that thought like a drowning woman to a piece of driftwood and tore the bag open. But when she saw what was inside, she froze. It was the Davenport family heirloom, the jade pendant. It hadn't been a gift at all. It had been me returning our engagement token. I had been trying to sever all ties with her, completely and irrevocably. That last, desperate sliver of hope inside her shattered. The world went black. Chloe developed a high fever. The doctor said it was likely brought on by extreme emotional distress. She remained unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights. In her delirium, she kept murmuring names, sometimes Julian's, sometimes mine. Her parents were beside themselves with worry. After 3 days, she finally regained consciousness. Her mother rushed to her side. "Chloe, you're finally awake. You were unconscious for 3 days. You scared me half to death." But as she looked at her daughter, she realized something was different. The look in Chloe's eyes was not the same. It was as if she were a different person. A tremor of fear went through her. "Chloe, don't scare me. Are you all right?" Chloe seemed to snap out of it then, her expression softening into something more familiar, but there was still a strange, complex look in her eyes. "Mom, I had a dream," she said softly. "In my dream, Ethan and I were married, and I was terrible to him." Hearing this, her mother's eyes welled up with tears again. "Oh, my child, why do you torture yourself like this? Ethan adored you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't appreciate him, and now that he's gone, you're haunted by him. But no matter how many dreams you have, Chloe, he's not coming back." Chloe frowned. She knew it wasn't just a dream born of longing. It was too strange, too vivid. Felt real, as if it had actually happened. In the dream, we had also been engaged since childhood. But in that version of events, I hadn't gone to the aerospace facility. I had stayed, and we had gotten married as planned. And in the dream, she had never discovered Julian's true nature, nor had she ever acknowledged her own feelings for me. She had been a terrible wife. In 20 years of marriage, she had never bought me a single gift, never initiated a date, and treated our physical relationship like a chore. It was only after I begged her on my 35th birthday that she agreed to be with me once a month. And all the while, she had continued to pine for Julian. While she had never been unfaithful, she had given him all the love and affection that should have been mine. Their empty, loveless marriage had dragged on for more than 20 years. Then, when she was 55, a major disaster struck her pharmaceutical company. The accident, as it turned out, was indirectly Julian's fault. By then, he was married to a woman from a moderately wealthy family. The dream Chloe, though consumed with jealousy, had given the woman's family numerous business opportunities, all to ensure Julian lived a comfortable life. But they had been incompetent. A simple manufacturing error had led to a contaminated batch of medicine, which had killed dozens of people. Chloe had been working around the clock to handle the fallout. In the middle of all this, Julian had called her late one night, complaining that he felt sick and that his wife was out of town. He'd asked her to come over, and the dream Chloe, still so infatuated with him, had actually driven through a blizzard in the middle of the night to be with him. But the roads were icy, and she was exhausted. She'd gotten into a car accident. The Chloe in the dream had died that night at the age of 55. But strangely, though her body was dead, her consciousness lingered. She was able to watch what happened after her death. She saw me finally find the photo album she kept locked in her safe. It was filled with pictures of Julian, his high school graduation, his college years, every birthday, every place they had ever gone together. She had meticulously documented and treasured every moment. The dream me, seeing that album, had finally understood the depth of her feelings for him. And not only that, before she died, she had written a will, leaving her entire fortune to Julian. This part didn't surprise her. Her own plan had been to do the same, to write a will immediately after our wedding, leaving everything to him. She had felt that since she couldn't give him a life with her, the least she could do was give him her money. That was why she had lied to me about needing a vasectomy, why she had been so determined not to have children with me. And in the dream, she had done just that. 20 years of marriage, no children, and an inheritance that all went to him. I had been left with nothing but the mountain of debt from her company's scandal, which, as her husband, was now legally mine. With my own family's fortune, I could have easily paid it off. But the victims' families didn't know that. They assumed that without her inheritance, I would be unable to pay. And so, in their grief and rage, they had stabbed me to death. The sheer horror of it all jolted her awake. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure if she was the Chloe of this world or the one from the dream. Her emotions were a tangled mess. Her first feeling was one of relief. In this world, I was still alive. I hadn't been murdered because of her. But then, the relief was replaced by a suffocating pain. In this world, though I was alive, I was in a place she could never reach. The Chloe in her dream, for all her faults, had at least had me for 20 years. But she, the real her, had lost me completely. The thought was a physical pain, making every breath a struggle. Seeing her daughter's distress, Mrs. Davenport grew alarmed. "Chloe, what is it? Are you in pain? Should I call the doctor?" Chloe looked up at her mother, her eyes red-rimmed, and forced the words out of her raw throat. "Mother, I think I'm actually in love with Ethan." As she said the words, she felt a great weight in her chest finally settle. She was finally ready to admit it, to face her own feelings for me. Her mother was stunned for a moment, then she, too, began to cry. "Yes," she sobbed. "I've known for a long time. They say a mother knows her daughter best. I saw how you felt about Ethan when you were just a girl. I never understood why you refused to admit it, even to yourself. But I knew you loved him, and that's why I always pushed for the two of you to be together. Did you really think I would force my own daughter into a loveless marriage, just to honor a promise to a dead friend? Oh, you foolish girl. If you loved him, why didn't you admit it sooner? Why didn't you treat him better? Why did you have to hurt him so badly that he left, completely brokenhearted, for you to finally realize your own feelings?" Chloe sat there in a stunned silence. She had always prided herself on her intelligence, on her ability to read her business rivals, to see through their strategies and motivations. And yet, she had been completely blind to her own heart. Why? Perhaps it was just rebellion. She had known me her whole life. We were childhood sweethearts. As a child, she had been so sweet to me, always wanting me to be the daddy when we played house. When had that changed? Oh yes, it was the year she was in high school, the year my mother died. Her mother had suddenly insisted on formalizing our engagement, on making us a real family. And at that same time, Chloe was fighting bitterly with her parents over which college major to choose. They wanted her to study finance, to prepare to take over the family business. But her dream was to be a fashion designer. In the end, she had yielded to their pressure and chosen a major she hated. But that spark of rebellion had never been extinguished. And when her parents then tried to arrange her marriage, that spark had erupted into a full-blown fire. Why should they control her career and her marriage? In her rebellion, she had started to treat me badly, as if being cruel to me was a way of fighting back against them. And then, near the end of college, she had met Julian. He was my complete opposite. I was confident, he was innocent. I was assertive, he was timid. I was the privileged heir, he was the penniless orphan. That stark contrast had drawn her to him. It was as if being kind to him was a way of proving that I wasn't her type, that her marriage to me was something she was being forced into. She hadn't even realized how trapped she was by her own twisted logic, how it had led her to make all the wrong choices. And now, she had finally seen that Julian was not the innocent boy she had imagined him to be. But even if he had been, she knew now that she had never truly loved him. Her feelings for him had been 30% pity and 70% rebellion. The one she had loved, deep down all along, was me. After all, she was now in control of the family business, the one making the decisions. If she had truly not wanted to marry me, she could have defied her parents. But she had clung to the marriage, using honoring her promise as an excuse. The truth was, she loved me. And now that she finally understood that, it was too late. Her mother was still speaking, her voice choked with tears. It's too late now. That project of his, 10, 20 years. You two have missed your chance. What's past is past. Everyone gets their heart broken. You need to move on. Find someone you can truly be happy with. A tremor ran through Chloe's body. She looked up, her eyes blazing. No, I will not let him go. Her mother was taken aback. She saw the fierce determination in her daughter's eyes, her hands clenched into tight fists. I will get him back, Chloe said, her voice ringing with conviction. As long as he is on this earth, I will find him. I don't care where I have to go. In that moment, everything became clear to her. Compared to the dream, where they had both died tragically after 20 years of a miserable, loveless marriage, this reality, however painful, still held a glimmer of hope. So what if I had left? I was still alive. She could still win me back. And she had to believe that after loving her for so long, I couldn't have just given up on her completely. She had just hurt me so badly that I needed to escape for a while. But now she knew her own heart. If she could just show me, if she could just prove her love, surely they could find their way back to each other. Her mother stared at her, aghast. Child, what are you saying? He's on a top-secret government project. How could you possibly find him? But Chloe's expression was serene. There's always a way, and if I can't find him, then I'll wait. 10 years, 20 years. I'll wait for as long as it takes. What? Her mother whispered, stunned into silence. But looking at the unshakable resolve on her daughter's face, she knew there was nothing she could say to change her mind. The young girl they could once control was gone. In her place stood a woman who had finally come into her own. Neither she nor her husband could sway her now. Chloe began to act immediately. The day she was discharged from the hospital, she started calling in favors, trying to find out which project, which facility I had been sent to. But the project was too highly classified. Even with all her connections, she hit a dead end. So she changed tactics. She began to invest heavily in various aerospace ventures. These were typically government-run initiatives, but with enough funding, private entities could join as investors or donors. And Chloe poured money into them, a staggering amount with no concern for the cost. She was laying the groundwork, convinced that one day her investments would lead her to me. The official story after the canceled wedding had been that I was injured and that the ceremony was postponed for a month. But when that month passed and I was still nowhere to be found, the questions started. Finally, her parents had to admit the truth. I had called off the engagement. The news caused a scandal. Everyone assumed the Davenports would quickly find a new match for their daughter. But then, to everyone's shock, Chloe made a public announcement. She was going to wait for me. She didn't say where I had gone, only that I was studying abroad, and that she would wait for my return. A wealthy heiress publicly declaring her devotion. It was the kind of story people loved to talk about. The Hayes and the Davenports were both prominent families, and Chloe and I were both considered quite attractive. We already had something of a following on social media. Chloe's public declaration of love went viral, trending on Twitter for days. Meanwhile, at the aerospace facility in Nevada, hey, did you guys see this online? Some heiress named Chloe Davenport just publicly announced she's waiting for her fiancé to get back from studying abroad. Wow, I saw that, but I thought she couldn't stand the guy. I remember reading once that for her birthday, he bought out a bunch of digital billboards to wish her a happy birthday, and when a reporter asked her about it, she just said it was a meaningless waste of money. Yeah, what was his name again? Ethan Hayes, I think. As they were talking, the researchers all happened to glance over at me, sitting silently at the end of the table, my head down. Hey, Ethan, that guy has the exact same name as you. Same last name and everything. My hand, holding my fork, froze. Life at the facility was isolated, and we were forbidden from contacting the outside world to prevent security leaks. But it wasn't as if they completely cut us off from the internet. Without some basic form of entertainment, morale would plummet. So we were allowed to browse the news and even order things online. We just weren't allowed to post anything, and all our packages were sent to a central address to be inspected before being delivered to us. So yes, I had seen the news about Chloe's grand romantic declaration. My colleagues were all looking at me with curiosity. You know, Ethan, the timing of her fiancé's departure is about the same as when you arrived, except he went to study abroad, and you came here. Yeah, If I didn't know any better, I'd almost think you were the guy, another one joked. They all laughed. I forced a smile. It's a big world. Lots of people with the same name. Here at the facility, we weren't particularly close. So, apart from my supervisor, who had seen my file and knew my background, none of my colleagues knew I was the heir to the Hayes fortune. They would never have guessed. After all, in their minds, what kind of trust fund kid would give up a life of luxury to come work in a place like this? So, they accepted my explanation without question and went back to their gossiping. Later that night, while my supervisor and I were cross-referencing some data, she finally brought it up. Ethan, she said gently, you've never talked about it, but I can guess that you came here because your fiancé broke your heart. It seems like she realizes her mistake now. Have you considered going back? She hesitated for a moment before adding, I know the rule is no one leaves until the project is complete, but exceptions can be made if you apply for one. But I answered without a moment's hesitation. I'm not leaving. I looked up at her and said calmly, maybe she does regret it now, but that doesn't matter. I didn't come here to spite her or to hide from her. I came here to pursue my dream. It was true. I had seen her public statements, but they meant nothing to me. So what if this version of Chloe had finally realized she loved me? So what if every word she said was sincere? A love that arrives too late is worthless. No amount of regret could change the pain she had caused me in this life or erase the memories of the last one. I was not going to give up anything else for her. I came here for my dream, not for anyone else. This life, I'm living for myself. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded, a little embarrassed. You're right, I was being short-sighted. I'm sorry. And so, my quiet life at the facility continued. I threw myself into my work, and watching the project advance, step by step, brought me a sense of joy and purpose I had never known. The years at the research center flew by. Before I knew it, 3 years had passed. One day, as I was leaving the lab, I ran into one of the project directors. He immediately pulled me aside. Ethan, there's a thank you dinner tonight for some of our major corporate donors. I'd like you to come along. I frowned. I don't think so. I'm just a researcher. Public relations isn't my job. He waved a dismissive hand. Don't be so modest. We all know who you are, Ethan. You're the heir to the Hayes fortune. You know how to handle these events better than a bunch of old academics. Just come along. Reluctantly, I agreed and accompanied the directors to the dinner. The moment we walked in, I saw her, Chloe, standing across the room in an elegant evening gown. I froze. She saw me at the same moment, and her face lit up with a radiant smile as she stood. Ethan, I finally understood what was happening. I turned to the director and said quietly, Sir, I think I should return to my work. I turned to leave, but before I could take 2 steps, she was there, her hand on my arm. Ethan, why are you running away from me? I pulled my arm free. I'm not running away, I said calmly. Her voice grew more agitated. You're lying. You were about to walk out the door. If you really don't care about me anymore, why can't you even face me? I sighed, a wave of weariness washing over me. I looked down at her, my gaze steady and direct. See, I'm not avoiding you. As I've told you before, I simply don't want to waste any more of my time on you. That's all. It was the truth. I had already wasted an entire lifetime on her, and the best years of this one. I didn't want to waste another second. A flicker of pain crossed her eyes.
I'm sorry, Ethan.
I was wrong. For the first time in her life, the proud Chloe Davenport lowered her head, her voice soft and pleading. Please, forgive me. I know I was terrible to you. I promise I'll make it up to you. Just come home with me, please. I just looked at her, my expression unmoved. You don't have to beg. I've already told you. Our engagement is over. We're strangers now. There's nothing more to say. But I don't want to let you go, she cried, grabbing my arm again. You have to listen to me. After you left, I had a dream. I think it was about my past life. In that life, we were married, but I was awful to you. I died and then you were murdered because of me. When I woke up, my heart was in so much pain. And that's when I realized that I truly love you. Please, she begged, don't leave me again. She was telling me about the dream to try and explain how she had come to realize her feelings. But as I listened, my own expression hardened. I stared at her for a long moment before I spoke. What if it wasn't a dream? She looked at me, confused. Ethan, what are you talking about? I pulled my arm from her grasp. There's no point in hiding it anymore, I said quietly. Chloe, I was reborn. That dream you had, that was our past life. So all the pain, all the despair you saw me go through, that was all real. She stared at me, utterly speechless. I looked her straight in the eye and said slowly and clearly, Chloe, if you had spent over 20 years of your life devoted to someone who gave you nothing in return, and then, in the end, you were murdered because of their selfishness. If you were given a second chance, would you give that person another opportunity? Would you waste a single second more of your life on them? The color drained completely from her face. She stood there, unable to speak. Your expression tells me your answer, I said quietly. So I hope you can understand mine. Chloe, don't come looking for me again. And with that, I turned and walked away. Chloe remained where she was, looking utterly broken. She had thought the dream felt real, but she had never imagined that it actually was. So I had truly lived through all of that. She sank to the floor, a look of utter despair in her eyes. She had thought the dream was a warning, a way for her to finally understand her own heart. She had never considered that it was a memory of everything I had endured. And if I had lived through all that, then it was true. I would never, ever be able to forgive her. At that realization, she covered her face and began to sob. Time flew by. Another 7 years passed in the blink of an eye. The day the manned spacecraft touched down safely, a roar of celebration erupted from me and my fellow researchers. We knew what it meant. The project was a complete success. 10 long years of work had finally paid off. Everyone was ecstatic. We could finally go home. I wonder if my kids will even recognize me, one colleague said. I just hope my mom's bad knee has gotten better, said another. The air was filled with the excited, emotional chatter of people eager to return to their lives. Only I remained quiet. I had no home to go back to. My parents were gone, and Chloe and I were nothing to each other. I was just returning to a quiet, solitary life. I returned to Seacrest City soon after. To my surprise, Mrs. Davenport was waiting for me at my new apartment. Ethan, you're finally back, she cried, grabbing my hand. You have to come quickly. Chloe might not have much time left. What? I was stunned. I followed her to the hospital, where I found Chloe lying in a bed, looking frail and weak, a shadow of her former self. What happened? I asked, frowning. In my past life, she had lived into her 50s and had died in an accident. Why was she so sick now? Mrs. Davenport's voice was thick with tears. After you left, she completely destroyed her health. She did nothing but work, day and night. We begged her to take care of herself, but she wouldn't listen. Her body just couldn't take the strain. They diagnosed her with terminal cancer a few months ago. A person's health is a delicate balance of genetics, diet, lifestyle, and emotional well-being. After I left, Chloe's spirit had broken, and she had punished her body with neglect, completely depleting her health. I looked at the woman in the bed. She gave me a weak, bitter smile. You came back, she whispered. You know, I had a plan. Since I wasted 20 years of your life in our last life, I was going to wait 20 years for you in this one. But it looks like I'm not going to make it. Ethan, after everything, can you forgive me? Can you give me another chance? I looked at the frail woman before me, a woman who had once been so vibrant, and after a long silence, I finally spoke. I forgive you. The light in her eyes faded. I had forgiven her, but I had not given her another chance. The meaning was clear. Even now, with her on her deathbed, I wouldn't lie to her. A look of profound sorrow crossed her face, and she closed her eyes. It was her own fault, she knew, her own punishment. In the next life, she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. A true next life with no memories of this one. I promise I'll be good to you. And then she was gone.